Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the fan-funded documentary, You're So Cool Brewster, the story of Fright Night. I apologize for that horrible Evil Ed impression. I can't do it justice, but I gave it a try and failed miserably, so my apologies. But before I get to share my thoughts on this particular documentary, I want to give a very special shout out to a longtime friend of mine, Corey, for sending me this film on Blu-ray. Thank you, Corey. I hope this is worth the wait, and I hope you enjoy this particular video. I also want to give a shout out to Matt, Rambaraf for Life, for sending me this on DVD and going through all the trouble that he went through to do it, to send it to me as a Christmas present a while back. Thank you. And also thank you for the gift of your friendship. It's honestly been one of the best gifts that I've ever gotten. So, yeah. I hope you enjoy this video as well, and I hope all of you enjoy this particular video. So yeah, You're So Cool Brewster, the story of Fright Night, is a labor of love by Christopher Griffiths and his particular production crew and company. You can tell that he's a fan of Fright Night, and this is without a doubt the most comprehensive, detailed making of documentary on the first two Fright Night films, and in all honesty, the legacy of the franchise that any fan could ever ask for. This is an incredibly enjoyable, fun time. It really is. It's over 3 hours, but it never really feels like it's that long. And it's one of those films that definitely was worth the wait and worth all the trouble. I'm gonna just lay it all out here before I, really go a little bit more in depth on my thoughts on the movie. I personally feel that the production company, Cult Screenings Ltd. And Dead Mouse Productions, they do some legitimately great work when it's finished, but I think there's a lot of things that they can work on. For one, I think how they deal with customers, how they deal with their customer service, I really think that could be improved upon dramatically. I don't think they really have pinned down or figured out the best way to handle situations like delays with shipping of their products and people who are understandably, justifiably upset that they aren't getting the product that they said they were honestly promised that they were going to get by a certain date, but then that date changed and changed more than once, and you can understand why some of these people would be frustrated. But if you look at the back and forth between some of the understandably justifiably disgruntled customers when it comes to this company, in particular on the Facebook page, it's not pretty. So I really think that that's something that they really could work on in the future. Also, I think they are spreading themselves way too thin. They are taking on way too much projects, and they're doing way too many projects at once. So after Fright Night, which in itself, this documentary took longer than they initially expected it to be completed, and also took longer for it to eventually ship out to people than they initially thought it was going to. Despite all of that, they decided to not just double down, but like quadruple down, or even more than that, on projects. So they started working on RoboDoc, and then at the same time they started working on an It 1990 documentary, and then they started working on a Police Academy documentary, and then they started working on a Night of the Demons documentary, and then they started working on a Robert Englund documentary about his career and his life, and so on and so forth, called Icon. And there's just way too many fucking projects to be doing at once, and none of them are finished. None of them are finished yet. RoboDoc isn't finished. it's in post-production hell right now, and then all these other documentaries, I don't even know what's going on with them. So it's kind of hard when you talk about this movie to not talk about the production company, because they go hand in hand. But despite all these misgivings I'm sharing here with this production company, they do a great job. When they get the product finished and they get it out to the public, it is well worth it. I just think they really could benefit from streamlining things a little bit more and not spreading themselves so thin. Maybe they might actually be able to finish certain projects like RoboDoc if they weren't trying to do 50 other projects at the same time. I'm just saying. But anyway, this is directed by Christopher Griffiths, and direction in a documentary is a whole different animal than direction for a feature film. And I think his direction is fine here, but really where a documentary shines or a documentary falters when it comes to this kind of documentary is the content. It's the bulk of what is contained inside of it, the interviews, and whether or not these interviews are full of insights and behind the scenes anecdotes that are legitimately interesting and captivating for an audience. And once you get those interviews and you know what you have to work with, that is where you ultimately build a documentary from. Even when it comes to like a screenwriting standpoint, it's also different. I've made a couple documentaries for some film classes. We don't really write script. The script is built from what we have shot, and that's when you ultimately build your story. You don't really build your story ahead of time, because you never really know what's going to happen. Your footage might not be interesting enough or in depth enough for you to be able to follow the story that you originally planned. So you have to come up with something on the fly anyway. So from what I've been doing, I come up with the story and come up with the structure after the fact. I don't try to do it ahead of time, because I don't really think that is really the best way to go about making a documentary. Now, when it comes to interviews, you do want to try to get specific, and you want to be as specific as you possibly can. So, and I think, the production here, I think they did a wonderful job really nailing down and getting the answers and the type of information from the cast and crew members that the audience, the core audience, the fans want to hear and want to actually see the most. But from a directing standpoint and a screenwriting standpoint, it's perfectly fine. I think the film looks really good. I think it's got a nice sense of style. I think it looks pretty slick. I particularly find the editing to be quite excellent. A lot of the transitions were really fun. I really liked the visual style of it when it comes to like the photos and how they are kind of three-dimensional, and how things kind of tied together, and how they mixed in footage from the films with interviews with people and rare behind-the-scenes photos and other stuff. I really think that it definitely enhanced and really improved the film's overall flow and just the overall impact of the movie. Definitely is a big part of why the film is so enjoyable and why the film goes by at a pretty quick pace, despite its really long running time. It's over 3 hours. This documentary is over 3 hours long. Now, there are some interesting things that they did with this that I'm not 100% a fan of. For instance, there are these transition sequences that are little filmed skits, essentially, with a actor named Simon Bamford, who you might recognize if you're a fan of Hellraiser, because he was a longtime friends with he still is still is a very close friend of Clive Barker, and he actually played Butterball in Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. And so he's in this playing a different kind of role. He does his best Roddy McDowall impression and is playing Peter Vincent, and he's the host of the documentary. And there are some moments where the impression is really, honestly, quite well done. But then there's other times where you can tell it's just kind of not really. It's really not that consistent in terms of the quality of the impression, and then some of it's a little bit too corny for me, and I don't know. It's just like I understand why they did it, but at the same time, it's kind of like I would have been fine if they just had Tom Holland narrate things or something, or did something fun, quirky, where you have different cast members narrate different transitions segments for different parts of the documentary instead of this wannabe Peter Vincent, because it's not, it's an impression of Roddy McDowall, and at times it's fine, but other times you can tell it's an impression, and I understand it's their way to homage things and so on and so forth, and I got nothing against Simon, but it's just one of those things that stands out to me. It's one of the weakest things about the movie is the Peter Vincent segments, at least for me personally. It's also kind of interesting. Not necessarily interesting. It's just kind of jarring when you have the film has a score, but it's one of those scores that's like pseudo Brad Fiedel. That's it's like pseudo. It's a pseudo version of the score by Brad Fiedel that was used in the 1985 film. But they aren't actually using the score for legal reasons or something, but then the score is still featured in the film. So it's like, why didn't you just use the score throughout the entire documentary? Why did you create a fake score that sounds like Brad Fiedel's music for the bulk of the movie, for the bulk of the documentary, if you still have sequences that feature the score? It's just kind of like, maybe they couldn't afford the rights or something. Maybe they could only afford to have the little bit of the score that's in the documentary. But it is something that you definitely do notice as an audience member. Now, really, what you want out of a documentary about a making of documentary on a feature film or a series of feature films, and what you're asking for is the most comprehensive account and the most detailed account of the making of a particular film. And the Fright Night portion of this documentary is no exception to that. Like, it is fully comprehensive, it is incredibly detailed, and it's a who's who of Fright Night collaborators and people who are responsible for the success of the film. I mean, you got Tom Holland, you've got William Ragsdale, you've got Amanda Bearse, you've got Jonathan Starr, Chris Sarandon. You even have Art Evans, who's interviewed in this documentary portion. You have some of the producers who produced the film. You also have some of the other people who are involved with the production when it comes to the effects artists. You have Richard Edlund, which this is kind of a funny observation I want to share. Richard Edlund, when he's interviewed, he sounds like the dude. He sounds like Jeff Bridges playing the dude in The Big Lebowski. That's not a bad thing, but I just thought it was kind of a funny observation. I'm like, oh my god, Richard Edlund sounds exactly like the dude. And he's an awesome dude in his own right. He's a legend in the industry as a visual effects artist. And I always love listening to him talk. And but yeah, you have Richard Edlund, you have Steve Johnson, who's quite a character, and I love watching interviews with him because he's just so passionate. And you also have Steve Neal and other various different people who worked on the film doing effects work. So, and they explain in great detail how they did a lot of these just really impressive effects that still to this day make your jaw drop. And that portion was the one that went by like an absolute breeze for me, because that's the stuff when it comes to making of documentaries that I love the most. the anecdotes from the cast and crew about, working on the film, those are also really fun too. And, how the screenwriter or the director came up with the idea and how they brought it to fruition. But when it comes to the thing that I really love the most, it's got to be the effects stuff. Just give me all of that, all day, every day. And so that is definitely something that was quite extensive in this documentary when it comes to the coverage of both films. But yeah, I mean, definitely the bulk of this particular documentary is on the 1985 film, and it's understandable. But in between all of these anecdotes of the cast and crew and all the behind the scenes looks at how they did, the effects and stuff like that, and all of the stories that everybody is sharing, there are some other things that are going on. For instance, there is an absolutely heartfelt and just really nice tribute to Roddy McDowall that honestly made me tear up and made me choke up, because you had all these people who worked on the film talking about Roddy and how much he meant to them and how much he would appreciate all the praise and all of the love that the film has gotten and all the love that he's gotten for his contributions to the film over the years. I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it, because they did a great job really showing how great of a person Roddy was and how much he genuinely would have adored the adulation the film is getting, and the adulation that he gets for his, in my opinion, unforgettable performance as Peter Vincent. So yeah, that was a really sweet tribute to Roddy, and that was really a nice touch. And then, like I said, there's just all these fun stories, and I don't really want to give away the details. I don't want to give away the trivia. I don't want to give away any of that stuff, because, hey, I want you to check it out for yourself. Because if you're a fan of Fright Night, this is definitely going to be right up your alley. And even if you're not a fan of Fright Night, if you just like making of documentaries, I might sound like a broken record, but I mean it, because this is legitimately really good. Now, the second part, it's not as long and it's not as in-depth, and it doesn't necessarily have everyone from the main cast that they could have gotten. When it comes to the documentary about Fright Night Part II, you still got Tommy Lee Wallace, you got Julie Carmen, William Ragsdale, you've got Brian Thompson, you've got John Grease. You have other different people who worked on it when it comes to the effects, when it comes to the makeup. So you still have, a really extensive and a really big group of people who worked on it and really made it what it was. But at the same time, you don't have one of the main big cast members. I understand why they don't have some of the other people, because they're no longer around. But for some reason, Tracy Lind, I guess, just didn't want to do it. And that was really unfortunate. I really would have liked to have heard her thoughts. I would have liked to have seen her. I would have liked to have seen what she had to say. Because I like Tracy, and I've always thought she really was a capable actress, and she did a good job in this, and she's done a good job in a lot of other things. So it would have been nice to have seen her contributions or what she had to offer, or in terms of what happened on the set, and what was going on, and all of that. But that's just me personally. That being said, it was still fun. It was still a fun portion to watch and to consume when it comes to talking about Fright Night Part II. And it was definitely something that was a little bit more unique in some ways, because when it comes to the 1985 film, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people already knew if you're a fan of the franchise. But with Fright Night Part 2, it seems like there wasn't as much like behind the scenes stuff. There wasn't as much detailed behind the scenes information or backstories or interviews when it comes to that particular film. So it was really nice to see Fright Night Part 2 get that particular treatment, and to get the most interviews that it possibly could when it comes to people who worked on the film. There's a little bit where they talk about the remake, but it's not really that extensive. Apparently, Colin Farrell was a big fan of the 1985 film. That's all good and well, but he definitely didn't show it by his performance. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna be honest. But I don't want to beat that dead horse anymore. And then they mentioned some of the comics and like the Amiga video game, but they don't really go into that much detail on them, probably because they didn't have the information or the interviews, or maybe didn't have the budget to go in any more in depth. They don't mention Fright Night 2 New Blood at all, which I thought was a little bit lame. But that's really the only thing that I feel that this was outright missing, that I feel that was kind of, it seemed like it was kind of deliberate or intentional or something. Maybe the filmmakers or the people who worked on it didn't think it deserved to be mentioned or something in any capacity. Why, I have no idea, but teach their own. But yeah, when it comes to documentaries like this, really what makes it good or bad is the interviews. And the interviews in this are incredible. These interviews are incredible. There's just so much variety, so many different viewpoints, so many different people who worked on both films, and it was really quite a blast to hear all their thoughts on Fright Night and Fright Night Part 2. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I really do not know what else to say about You're So Cool Brewster, other than it's a very excellent, well-made, well-produced, well put together, stylish, slick, fast-paced despite its running time, enjoyable documentary on the first two Fright Night films and its impact overall on audiences. It's not perfect. Like I said, there are some voices that are missing that it would be nice to have heard what they had to say, and the Peter Vincent segments don't always work, and there's some other sort of things that kind of stand out, but there's nothing that's really a glaring error, though. And one more thing I want to mention definitely before I end this review is there was a really just fantastic, just spectacular, unexpected, face-to-face, personal message from Tom Holland to fans of the film that really made me choke up too, because it really shows the audience and the fans who are watching this documentary, which let's be honest, this documentary is made for the fans by the fans. And Tom Holland turns to the camera and thanks us for, our contributions, our support of the film. A film that he's so passionate about. And it was just so refreshing to see a filmmaker share that same passion that the fan base has, and also just be as equally appreciable of what the fans have to offer when it comes to a film that they've made. It's just something that's just you don't see as often as I honestly think we should. Filmmakers actually, talking directly to the fans and just saying, thank you so much. And you could tell too that he meant it. And that went such a long way and really elevated this documentary to an even higher level, because it made it more personal and it made things just feel like this isn't just nostalgia, like there's something deeper here. and it's a genuine love for Fright Night, and it's on display with this documentary, and with the final shot and the final words from Tom Holland, who gets visibly choked up talking about the fans. So I just thought that was a really nice touch, along with the tribute to Roddy, and those two things just made this film just so much better, and it made it feel, I wouldn't necessarily say it would have been superficial if they didn't have those things, but it just made it so much more capable of a much deeper resonance with the audience, if it didn't have those elements. But anyway, I've been rambling long enough. Check it out if you got the chance. Even if you don't have the opportunity to see the full documentary, I know the portion that is just talking about Fright Night in the 1985 film is on the most recent Sony Blu-ray, as well as the Eureka Entertainment Blu-ray. So if that's the only version that you have to watch, it's still well worth your time and your effort checking it out. But I think the full version might be on Shudder. So if you have access to the full version and you're a big Fright Night fan and you haven't seen it yet, definitely track down the full version, because I think you'll definitely get a kick out of, and will definitely appreciate seeing the documentary that's talking about the sequel every bit as much as the documentary about the first film. But anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on You're So Cool Brewster, the story of Fright Night. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.